Now, the food we are likely to be eating in future decades, including dishes created by 3D printers, you're kidding, were discussed,
it's happening already.
Were discussed by international experts at the Global Table Food Summit in Melbourne just days ago. Now, to find out more, reporter Veronica Matheson talked to Brisbane-based food futurist Tony Hunter, who was a speaker at the 3-day event held at Melbourne Showgrounds.
Tony, how far ahead does a food futurist look?
I'm thinking out 20, 30 years' time at least, because that's a time frame when you get such major changes in any industry, but particularly at the moment in food.
So what is going to be on the global table in, say, 30, 40, 50 years' time?
So many different things, from the ones that most people have probably heard about, like insect proteins, of course, plant-based, and the most out there one, I suppose, the longer-term one, is our cell-based meat.
Are we looking at a sci-fi world in the future where instead of sitting down to dinner, we will just be popping a pill?
I don't think we're ever going to get to the stage of popping a pill, just from the sheer physical impossibility of packing enough nutrients into a pill. But I think you're right, and that it may not look quite the same as it does today, but food on your plate could look very much the same as today, but it could be made by quite different methods.
Okay, so maybe we could still have the Sunday roast as an option, but maybe it will be made in a different way or with different contents.
Certainly meat is one of the things that they're looking at, quite a few alternatives, and these alternatives are a lot closer than you think. The cell-based meat, where you take a few cells and then from an animal and then grow it in a big fermenter, we're likely to see products in very small quantities on the market by 2021. And around about 2022, we'll start to see 3D steaks made.
In heaven's name are they?
Well, you take the cells and you structure them in a three-dimensional, so it looks like the steak that you'd have on your plate today.
And how do you do that?
You grow the cells and then you use what they call a scaffold. And some people are actually looking at using what they call mushroom mycelia, which is the bit of the mushroom that grows underground. And you can grow those and then grow the cell on that scaffold to give you the shape that you want. And basically it is a piece of steak and animal cells. It will taste like a steak because the cells themselves are from an animal. We're just growing them in a fermenter instead of growing them on an animal. And it's far more efficient and far more sustainable than actually growing them on an animal.
Right. I'm confused already, Tony. But we are actually already eating plant-based hamburgers, which already seem to be moving mainstream in the supermarkets.
Certainly all around the world, plant-based meat alternatives are getting traction. From a health point of view, sustainability, that's why people are buying these products.
So it sounds as if farmers should start to be worried about their future.
I think farmers should be excited about the future, Veronica. I think it's an exciting time. Let's look at the cell-based meat. When you grow that, you need a growth media. The growth media is made from plant materials. So farmers are going to be absolutely in with all the increases in growing cell-based products instead of growing them on the hoof. And we need to go back and realise that there is not enough land and water on the planet to feed everybody in the world the way that we eat today, let alone in 10 or 20 years' time with another billion people on the planet. We have to find alternative ways of making our food. There's huge opportunity for farmers to optimise their crops in particular for a new usage. Imagine if you said, I've got wheat that I don't want to make bread with, but I want to optimise to make this nice growth media for making cell-based meat. That would give you a whole new industry. We're the fastest growing vegetarian and vegan country in the world in terms of growth rate. People are going, look, I feel I'm eating a bit too much meat. I want something else. And if they can find something that looks like, tastes like meat, or just simply is a great tasting product in its own right, then they will eat those plant-based products.
So what would we be seeing? Sausages, hamburgers?
Certainly the first ones off are the easy ones to duplicate are the mince products. Like you said, hamburgers, mince, meatballs, sausages. Plant-based steaks are coming, and one of the ones that people are looking at is 3D printing. MasterChef had a competition last year on that one. And basically it's like a printer with a nozzle, but the nozzle, instead of printing ink, prints whatever you tell it to. Whatever you can flow through there, it will print. And you can use that to print a steak. And you can align the fibres and print in different directions to give a mouthfeel like a conventional meat steak, but it's made of plant products.
So you actually put the ingredients into this 3D printer?
That's right. So you have like a tube, just maybe 4 or 5 centimetres in diameter, maybe 10, 20 centimetres long, full of anything you like. You can actually put dough in there and then print out a pizza base, and then another nozzle with some flowable cheese, which will put the cheese on for you, and then you can bake that in the oven.
Like the microwave, we'd also maybe have a 3D printing machine in our home.
They are about the size of a microwave oven, and it can do all sorts of things. I think there's a little way to go before that turns up routinely in people's kitchens. But if you want one, you can pay about $5,000 and get one from the States now and have a play around.
So in the meantime, maybe we'll be eating insects like grasshoppers that are already so popular in Asia.
That's right. There's quite a few people in Australia who are looking at growing grasshoppers and even ants and crickets and all sorts of things. I was in Thailand earlier in the year, and I had hot and spicy Thai crickets and sesame seed silkworm larvae.
Sounds delicious.
It was actually quite crunchy and nice. And no, the legs don't get caught between your teeth with the crickets. I mean, it's very, very good high-quality protein and high-quality fat from insects. And what I would say to people is, because they look at me and they go, oh, insects. And I go, do you eat prawns? They say yes. I said, well, let's think how we eat a prawn. First, we snap its body off. Then we take its tail off. Then we rip the skeleton and legs off the outside. Sometimes we pull the intestines out and sometimes we don't. Then we dip it in sauce and eat it. The other example I give people is sushi. Back in the 80s, if you told someone you were going to go and eat some raw fish, they looked at you like you had two heads. It was like, are you weird? Raw fish? Now, if you say you're going to have sushi, does anyone bat an eyelid?
You were saying we will soon be getting milk that isn't produced by cows and egg whites without chickens.
Products are in the test stages now. They got a yeast, put some DNA in a yeast for producing animal whey protein, which is a major component of milk once you've got made your cheese, and they use that whey protein to make ice cream. That should be on the market. You're looking at next year we're going to be buying that. And the other one, you're right, is the egg whites. No chicken egg whites, made the same way. Take the DNA for the egg white proteins, put them in a microbe, get the microbe to grow. It produces that protein. You use that in all sorts of products, everything from meringues to sports drinks.
It all sounds so fake.
It is interesting, though, as what makes something fake and what we all consider to be natural. I mean, so people think eating prawns is natural, but really think about the buggy eyes and the long antenna and that beaky nose. How natural is it eating a prawn?
30, 40 years' time, are we going to be sitting around the table having a meal?
I personally don't see us moving away from having something physical and a love of food and a love of flavour and texture and everything else. Now, traditional 3 meals where everybody sat around, as we all know, those days are pretty well gone. So people are growing up differently, being busy, doing different things. But I think there's still a space, though. The restaurant industry hasn't gone broke, but people still want a good experience and a social experience. That will always be there. It's just how we produce that food, where it comes from, how sustainably we can produce it, and how efficiently we can produce it, that will change.
So the government is aware of these developments.
I really don't believe they've come to grips with how close these technologies are and what they could mean to Australian agriculture. For Australia, if these new technologies take off and we're not in those technologies, then we will be left behind.
Finally, Tony, you look pretty fit and healthy. What sort of diet do you follow?
I'm a carnivore. I certainly eat meat. But I tell you, I started questioning why I eat the way I do. Why, when I think of a meal plan for a day, do I think bacon in the morning, ham or pastrami for lunch and chicken for dinner. Why do I think that way? But that's culturally where we come from, and it's certainly I now eat more plant-based products. But I think as human beings, whether it's cultural or built into our genetics, we want meat. And there's very few people, I believe, that will ever be able to completely stop eating meat. However it's produced, that may change, but I think there will always be a demand for meat.
That was
food futurist Tony Hunter.
Tony Hunter. Yeah, speaking of Veronica Matheson, that's she across the other side of the room, on the ever-changing food scene.